Sarah walked through the quiet streets of the city, feeling the cool wind brush against her face, and the soft hum of distant traffic echoed through the empty avenues. She had thought tonight would be ordinary routine, nothing unusual, just a simple walk to clear her mind after a long day at work. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and glanced at the glowing streetlights, their light casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. She did not notice the dark figure watching. From the corner of an alley, eyes fixed on her. Every movement, a faint shiver ran down her spine, but she shrugged it off, thinking it was only the chill in the air, and yet something deep inside told her that tonight would not be ordinary. She walked, faster, letting her heels click sharply against the asphalt, the sound echoing through the quiet street as she passed parked cars. She thought she heard a rustle behind her, a faint step that did not belong to the hum of the city. She turned quickly and saw nothing, just the empty alley and a pile of trash swaying gently in the wind. She exhaled slowly and shook her head, telling herself she was imagining things, but the feeling of being watched lingered, pressing at the back of her neck like an invisible hand. She continued walking, her senses sharpened without her even realizing it, scanning every shadow, every movement, every sound like she had done countless times before in places far more dangerous than this. The street narrowed ahead, and she could see the glow of the corner store across the intersection, a place she had passed countless times, but tonight it seemed distant, like a beacon in a fog. She moved towards it, hoping to keep the distance from whatever she felt was following. Her pace quickened a little, a flutter of unease settling in her stomach. She could hear the soft scuff of footsteps behind her again. But when she turned, there was no one. The shadows seemed heavier, the darkness thicker than it should have been. She tightened her grip on the strap of her bag and felt the familiar calm that always came before the storm. The calm that told her to be ready for anything. Sarah's mind wandered to her past as she walked. She remembered the countless missions overseas, the nights where silence could mean life or death, the faces of enemies she had faced and the lessons she had learned, the discipline, the awareness, the split-second decisions that had saved her life more than once. She thought about the training that had transformed her from a young recruit into a Navy SEAL. Someone who could move unseen, strike without warning, and disappear into the shadows. Her muscles tensed as the memory of those moments surged within her, and she realized that the instincts she thought she had left behind had never really left her. They were awake now and humming beneath her skin. A sudden sound made her freeze, the faint metallic clink of something hitting the ground behind her. She held her breath, listening, her heart calm yet alert. Like a predator waiting for the first move of its prey, she slowly turned her head to see a figure emerging from the shadows, tall, broad, and moving with an awkward confidence, like someone who thought they were invisible but clearly were not. She did not panic. She let the moment stretch just long enough to see the glint of eyes that did not belong to someone in this city, someone with intentions that were dark and dangerous. She knew that whatever was about to happen would not be quick, it would not be simple. And yet she was ready. The first man lunged before she could even think. Her body reacted instantly. A blur of motion, she twisted out of the way, feeling the rush of air as his arms swung past her, her training kicking. In automatically sensing his center of gravity, predicting his next move, she pushed off the wall of the building beside her and struck him with a precise hit to the chest, sending him staggering back against the cold bricks. The sound of impact echoed down the narrow street, and the other figure paused, uncertain for a fraction of a second. That was all she needed to adjust her stance and prepare for the next attack. Her movements were fluid. She flowed from one motion to the next, using the environment to her advantage. A trash can became a shield, a lamppost, a tool for leverage. She did not think, she simply acted each decision, the product of years of experience and instincts that refused to lie dormant. She could see the shock on their faces as they realized this woman was not defenseless, and the realization sparked fear in their eyes that made them reckless, and the moment they moved recklessly, she saw the opening that would allow her to take control of the situation completely. The wind carried the faint sound of distant sirens. Or maybe it was only her imagination. She did not allow herself to be distracted. Her focus narrowed entirely on the men before her, their steps hesitant now as they realized they were dealing with someone far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The streetlights flickered, casting strobing shadows across their faces. She noticed the hesitation, the micro-expressions that told her everything she needed to know, and she knew that one wrong move for them could be their last. They had attacked her without warning, but she would make sure they paid the price for their mistake. A sharp movement to the left, a sudden pivot, and she had disarmed the first attacker in a swift motion that seemed almost effortless. He crumpled to the ground, coughing and clutching his shoulder. The second man took a cautious step back, but she was already moving toward him. Her eyes locked on his every movement, predicting his next attack before he even thought of it. The tension between them was electric. The street seemed to hold its breath, the night seemed to stretch endlessly, and in that moment Sarah realized that the real danger was not just the men before her, but the unknown forces that had sent them as. The adrenaline coursed through her veins. She felt alive in a way she had not felt for years, her mind clear. Her senses heightened, every sound, every shadow, every movement. Registering instantly in her awareness, she circled the remaining attacker. Like a hawk watching its prey, her movements deliberate, her gaze unflinching. He raised his hands hesitantly, unsure what to do, and she knew he was moments away from panic. She could almost see the calculations running through his mind, every option, failing to keep him safe. And then she heard it, a faint sound from the darkness behind him. Something she had not expected, a presence even greater than the two she was facing, and it made her pause for the briefest instant, enough for the unknown threat to step closer into the dim light, revealing a figure she had not anticipated. Sarah froze for a heartbeat, her instincts screaming at her that this was no ordinary attacker. The figure stepping from the shadows moved with a precision and confidence that immediately set her on edge. She adjusted her stance, planting her feet firmly on the cracked pavement, her mind racing through the possible scenarios she could face in the next moments, every fiber of her being alert to danger. The smaller men before her had already realized they were outmatched. But this new presence was different, larger, more dangerous, and it carried an aura of control that made her senses sharpen even further. The leader stepped closer, his movements deliberate, calculated. Like a predator testing its prey, he did not speak, his eyes cold, assessing, calculating, measuring her reaction, and Sarah felt the familiar adrenaline surge from her toes to the crown of her head. She knew that one misstep could cost her everything. She shifted her weight slightly, testing his response, and in that moment she noticed the glint of a weapon in his hand, a faint reflection from the flickering streetlights. She smiled slightly inwardly, knowing that the fight would not be long, but it would be brutal. The first strike would be decisive, and the outcome would depend on her ability to anticipate his next move before he even thought of it. The smaller attackers began to recover their senses and moved to flank her, attempting to create a distraction, but she had already accounted for their actions. She flowed effortlessly between them, striking one with a precise elbow to the jaw and spinning to knock the other off balance, using their momentum against them, and as she did, the leader lunged forward, testing her reflexes. She twisted her body, narrowly avoiding the tip of the weapon scraping past her shoulder. The sharp sound of metal against fabric sent a shiver down her spine, and she realized that the danger was far closer than she had imagined. Her heart beat in rhythm with the tension in the street, and every step she took was a dance of anticipation and controlled violence. The leader circled her slowly, his eyes never leaving hers, each movement calculated. To provoke a reaction, he was strong fast, but he underestimated the depth of her experience. Sarah ducked under his swing and struck at his legs, destabilizing his center of gravity the moment he staggered. She followed through with precision, sending him skidding back across the asphalt, but he recovered with astonishing speed, a smirk curling on his lips as if he enjoyed the challenge, and she knew that this man had been trained, someone with a background almost as dangerous as hers, and that realization made her tighten every muscle in her body, preparing for what she knew would be a battle that tested every skill she had learned over the years. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows over the scene. The wind carried a faint sound of sirens, or maybe it was only her imagination. The smaller men scrambled to recover, trying to find an opening, but every move they made played into her strategy. She moved with fluidity and precision, intercepting each strike with a combination of force and control. Her mind worked faster than any thoughts she had ever known, predicting the attacker's next moves, adjusting her own reflexively, and in that moment she realized that while she had faced enemies before, nothing had felt quite like this. The stakes were higher, the danger more immediate, and the unknown factor that brought these men here was still hidden, lurking just out of sight. The leader lunged again with a sudden speed that made her take a cautious step back. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the impact, and launched a counterattack that sent him crashing against a wall. The sound echoed down the street like a gunshot. She felt the rush of exertion in her muscles, the sharp intake of breath in her lungs, and yet she did not slow her movements, every instinct alert, every decision measured, every action designed to dominate the situation. The smaller men watched with fear growing in their eyes, realizing that their plan had failed before it even began, and that the woman they had chosen to attack was far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The wind shifted, carrying a faint whisper that made her pause for just a moment, enough to sense another presence behind the leader. Someone else had arrived, silently moving in the shadows unnoticed, but felt deeply by her trained instincts. She adjusted her stance, ready for whatever was coming. Her muscles coiled like springs, every sense sharpened to the point of pain. She could see the tension in the leader's shoulders. He too sensed the unseen threat, and it distracted him just enough for her to gain the upper hand temporarily. And as she prepared for her next move, she realized that the real danger of the night had only just begun, and the true enemy might be closer than she thought. She struck the leader with a series of rapid, precise blows, each calculated to destabilize him. He stumbled back, but before she could press her advantage, the figure from the shadows emerged fully into the dim light, taller, broader, carrying an air of authority that made even the leader pause for a moment. The new arrival did not attack immediately. Instead, he assessed the scene, watching the fight unfold, his presence alone, changing the dynamics of the confrontation. Sarah felt a thrill of tension surge through her as she realized that she would have to adapt instantly, her mind racing through scenarios, every possible strike, every possible counter, every possible outcome that could decide who would survive this night and who would fall before it ended. The smaller men tried once more to intervene, but their hesitation cost them. Sarah anticipated their moves before they fully committed, striking first, disarming one with a swift maneuver that left him writhing on the ground. The other tried to run, but she blocked his path with precision. He froze and fell back, realizing he had nowhere to go. Her focus returned to the larger figures, the leader and the mysterious newcomer. Their eyes locked on hers, calculating, trying to find weaknesses, and as the first of them shifted his stance, she could see the subtle changes that betrayed his intentions. She took a deep breath, centering herself, readying for the moment that would define the rest of the night, and then a sudden noise from the end of the street drew her attention, a sound that made her blood run cold. A vehicle slowly rolled to a stop, a faint engine hum carrying a shadowy figure inside. Sarah tensed, the new threat unseen yet palpable, waiting just beyond her perception. She could feel the tension thicken like a storm about to break. The leader moved toward her faster. Testing her reflexes, she sidestepped barely, avoiding a swipe aimed at her side, and countered with a precise strike that sent him staggering. She felt the satisfaction of a well-executed move, but knew the night was far from over. The shadowy figure in the car had not moved yet, its presence. A silent threat waiting to unleash chaos in a moment when she was distracted and exhausted, and as she scanned the street trying to anticipate the next move, she realized that the line between hunter and hunted had blurred, and that the danger surrounding her was far greater than she could have imagined. Sarah's breathing was steady, her mind sharp, each thought clear. Despite the physical exertion, she calculated her next moves, weighing risk and advantage. She moved like a shadow weaving between attackers, striking and evading, predicting every step. But the new threat remained a question mark, a presence she could feel but not yet see. And as she glanced toward the end of the street, she caught a fleeting glimpse of movement inside the car that made her blood run cold. She knew the fight was far from over. The night still held secrets the attackers had underestimated her so far, but the unseen force waiting to strike might prove far deadlier. And in that moment she realized that survival would demand everything she had learned and more. Sarah's breath came in shallow bursts, her senses heightened, every sound, amplified the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic, the faintest shift in the air around her. She knew the newcomer was still there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. Not now, not when the stakes were so high. She adjusted her grip on the strap of her bag, feeling the reassuring weight of the concealed weapon inside. She had trained for moments like this, prepared for the unexpected, but this felt different. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the promise of danger, and she could feel the weight of it pressing down on her chest. The leader recovered, his stance eyes narrowed with renewed determination. He had underestimated her before, but now he was focused, intent on taking her down. The smaller men flanked him, moving with purpose, trying to encircle her. But Sarah anticipated their moves before they fully committed. She sidestepped one, grabbing his arm and using his momentum to throw him into the other, sending them both crashing to the ground. She didn't pause to watch them scramble to their feet. Instead, she turned her attention back. To the leader, who was closing in quickly, she feinted to the left, then darted to the right, striking him in the ribs with a sharp elbow. He grunted in pain but didn't falter, his eyes locked onto hers with a mixture of respect and fury. The newcomer remained a silent presence in the background, but Sarah could feel his gaze on her, every movement calculated, every breath measured. She knew he was waiting for the right moment to intervene, and she had to be ready for it. She couldn't afford to be distracted, not even for a second. The leader lunged again, this time with a speed that took her by surprise. She barely managed to block his strike, but the force of it sent her stumbling backward. She regained her balance quickly, but the impact had left her momentarily disoriented enough for the smaller men to close in. She spun to face them, delivering a swift kick to one and a punch to the other, sending them sprawling. But the leader was already on her again, relentless in his pursuit. She had to end this now, before the newcomer made his move, before the situation escalated beyond her control. She feinted once more, drawing the leader in, then pivoted, delivering a powerful strike to his throat. He staggered back, gasping for air, but didn't go down instead. He grinned through the pain, and Sarah realized with a sinking feeling that he wasn't just a hired muscle. He was the real threat, the mastermind behind the attack, and she had been playing into his hands from the beginning. Wind shifted, carrying a faint scent of something metallic, and she knew without looking that the newcomer had finally decided to make his move. He stepped forward from the shadows, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the vicinity. His eyes locked onto hers, assessing, calculating, and Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had faced many dangers in her life, but this felt different. This felt like the beginning of something far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Sarah stood over the newcomer, her breath ragged, her body screaming with exhaustion. She had done it, she had survived, but the victory felt hollow. The man before her was still alive, still watching her with those cold, calculating eyes. She stepped back. Slowly, her senses on high alert, every muscle coiled, ready for another attack. But he didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at her, and she knew that this was far from over. The night had taken everything from her, her strength, her resolve, her sense of safety. And yet she was still standing still, breathing still alive. The faint sound of sirens reached her ears, growing louder with each passing second. Help was on the way. But she couldn't wait. She couldn't let her guard down. Not when the danger was still so real. She turned away from the newcomer, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement, any hint of another threat. But the street was empty, silent. And she realized with a sinking feeling that the true danger had never been the men who attacked her. It had always been the shadows, the unseen forces pulling the strings. As she disappeared into the night, she knew that this was just the beginning, and that the shadows would always be watching, waiting for their next move.